Kicking.
Yep. Hey, good to see you.
Same here.
Siti Muga.
Very good morning.
You had a good one as well.
Yes.
Good morning, Siti.
Ndu.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
When you offer me salutations with the same intonation and the same wording, good morning, Siti. I say good morning. Say, good morning, Siti. Then you go again a third time, good morning, Siti. Okay, good morning.
Point taken.
How do you do?
Well, you know, the response to that is, how do you do? I've never understood that really. Yes. Ati, how do you do? How do you do?
Fine.
Yes.
Teacher, how you day?
How you doing?
How you there? How far?
It's rolling.
No.
It's rolling off the woman's tongue.
Right.
She doesn't need.
Yes,
She doesn't
yes.
need.
No
teaching.
teaching required.
No.
What did you say? How far?
How far now?
How far? So how does how far? What is it?
You say I did.
I did.
How far I day?
Yeah.
So what is how far?
How far is like, what's up? How are you? How's it going?
How far?
How far?
Like how's it so far?
Yeah,
How far?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
How far?
And you, Eric,
very
how are
funny.
you? I feel that you feel a bit dejected because nobody really ever asks you how you're doing.
Yeah, people always assume
That you're
look at
fine.
these guys. I'm fine. I day.
Oh,
The body,
good.
the inside the clothes.
That's a good one.
Working, isn't it? So yes, we know that this week is going to be a busy one,
Right.
especially for news and
And a short
the
one.
news reporting, and also it's going to be a short one for those who are going to work in formal employment. Yes, tomorrow is a public holiday. It's a public holiday, of course, because we'll be having the prayer service.
A public holiday
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
tomorrow, as in no work for other Kenyans, including us.
Yes,
Well,
It's
Nice.
good.
we're not coming to work tomorrow.
Fun. It
We
doesn't
just have fun. You know, we don't work here.
Oh, we just talk.
We just talk.
The whole day.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Wednesday, of course, the prayer service. Wednesday is the funeral itself. So the body has been lying in state this is the third day.
Right.
So, of course, that is what makes the headlines this morning. What do you have on the nation, Tricks?
well, it says the journey home. We're told about the government inspector. The president catches government officials off guard as he arrives to inspect preparations, which is quite interesting. I saw a picture of him driving himself to the venue. So pretty interesting. That would be the angle that they took, because I'm sure it's unique for a president to literally just go and view and try and figure out how things are going. And also the Kenyans milling around Parliament. Literally, they're lining around the blocks. And we are being told, similarly, on the top page of the Standard, that's almost 100,000 Kenyans went to Parliament to view the body of the former president who's lying in state.
That's in the 2 days. So what is this that the president
So far.
did? He made an impromptu stopover where? At
Parliament.
He went to Parliament, and then from there he went to the Nyayo National Stadium to basically see,
When was this?
yesterday to see how plans and preparations are going ahead. And I think he shocked everybody. If there was anybody sitting down and not doing what they should have been doing, he got on that. And he drove himself,
Yeah.
interestingly, and his motorcade was actually chasing him through the middle of town.
So he's the one
And
who
he
was
ended
driving.
up at, yes, he
Chasing
was
him.
driving. And so he ended up at Nyayo National Stadium to check out what was going on.
What car was he driving?
It was a Mercedes Jeep. I
The
paid
black
attention
one.
to those
The
details.
G-Wagon.
That's right.
I expected nothing less. I was thinking he's going to rock in there with the Mobius, Kenyan manufactured car, you know?
Unfortunately, no. Not
Is that
today.
car manufactured in Kenya?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where?
The Kenyan Mobius is actually, it's done.
Oh, sorry.
You've
Did you
seen
say
it, right?
where or why?
Oh, no, where?
Okay.
Where?
Where in Kenya?
Yes.
It's somewhere, I think, in the industrial area.
And the showroom is just in Samir Park next year.
So we actually manufacture
We have
cars.
our own
Yes,
Jeep,
we
my
have a
friends.
brand.
Okay.
Mobius.
And it works.
As in you
West,
put fuel in,
yes.
you put the key in the
It
ignition,
does
it will
work.
move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does work.
I'm just asking.
It's a very hardy car, actually. If you look at it. Yes.
Not doing very well in the market, though, because I don't hear people talking about their Mobius.
Maybe they should give it to the police force. to test.
Probably.
This is
yeah.
This is
Actually a
how.
good
This is
idea.
where the government should actually now be helping such companies. So you
Yes.
will take a couple, use them in the police force or in other departments.
So why I asked
And let
is some
people
years
start
back
using.
in the Moi era, I think it was Gigi Karaoke who was, I think, a minister for interior. We did get some vehicles from India. They were told they were hardy. The thing that made them remarkable was they were not very fast.
The Mazdas.
No.
The Mahindras.
They were called Mahindra.
They plodded along.
These ones didn't plod, they sauntered.
They took their sweet time.
Kabisa. In fact, you got the impression, any thief would look at the car and smile and say,
Hey.
if this is how they want to fight crime, I think they should be encouraged to do so.
Great.
So the president was there. Now, the standard headline is Day Moi braved gunfire at home. Now, of course, it's looking back at that day in 1982 when the president was at home and
Got the bad news.
that stuff was happening. And at that time, what was he? Mahmoud Mohammed.
It was Mahmoud Mohammed, and I remember there's one gentleman by the name of Hezekiah Yugi, I think he was DC in that part of the world.
So DC, Hezekiah Yugi was DC Nakuru.
Yes, I think Yusuf Haji was PC, if I'm not wrong, around that same time.
And then Mahali Mohammed was he a captain at that point?
I'm not sure what he was. Mahmoud Mohammed, it's after that Mahmoud Mohammed, if you remember, rose, yes. But he was in the Air Force, if I get it right.
Yes.
And I think the general in charge at that point, I think, was Mulingi, if
Yes.
I'm not wrong.
Yes, it was.
Yes. And the problem was at the Air Force. It did cost the Air Force commander his job, and in fact, he was on trial. I think he was even jailed, if I'm not wrong.
A lot of coverage here, page 2 to 13, 19, 20, and 44 is all about the late President Daniel Moi. The front bigger picture there, of course, is people milling to go and view the body.
Right. Of course, we know that, of course, as Trick said, 100,000 people, approximate number of Kenyans who had viewed former President Moi's body by yesterday. And of course, we're going to see a lot more today. It was interesting that quite a number of people traveled from around the country then to come into Nairobi for the viewing. So again, today, of course, is the final day of viewing, 8 to 5 p.m. There'll be viewing of the body as Kenyans pay their last respects. Of course, we know that quite a number of roads will be closed. We'll be giving you details about that in a short while also. Dignitaries, also arriving. We've got sitting and retired heads of state, AU and EU representatives. They will jet in. I think some of them started coming in yesterday. We'll see a lot more coming in today that will attend the memorial service at Nyayo National Stadium tomorrow. So it'll leave Nyayo for Wilson Airport and then flown to Kabarak in Nakuru County at the end of tomorrow. So we're expecting 10 heads of state. They're expected to, be at the funeral service. And we also know that the Nairobi Eldoret Highway will be closed for only heavy commercial trucks and trailers to ease traffic for dignitaries traveling to Wednesday's burial. So there'll be quite a number of dignitaries who will be at the memorial service tomorrow, and will also then be at the funeral service in Kabarak on Wednesday.
Yeah, and speaking of dignitaries, we also have the former president, Moi Kibaki, who did view the body. They accorded him some private time to do the viewing himself, and we're told that on the front page of the Daily Nation that singing stopped, cameras were switched off, and the public viewing was halted to give the former president privacy to mourn and the man he succeeded. And obviously, with this, there has come a lot of attention to his health, a lot of concern, trying to figure out whether he's well. He's rarely in the public view like this. Yeah.
Actually, the former President Kibaki must have a very strong constitution because remember, even prior to his becoming president, he was involved in an accident. Then he was in and out of hospital for the longest time. Now, the one thing many people don't understand is that when you fall sick or whatever illness, every time you go into hospital, you don't emerge stronger.
No.
You're weaker. Yes, that's what illness does to you. And if chronology isn't on your side, as in meaning you're older, then you actually keep getting weaker. So and then if you consider that in the light or the background of the pressures that come with being president, if the man is still alive and well, he must have a very, very strong constitution.
Yeah, and with the pictures, all things considered, he looks pretty good, I think.
Yep. He's able to still walk, and do all those things. The Standard also has a story of the dream team that Moi created. You've talked about this dream team for quite a number of...
Yes, we've touched on it from time to time.
time to time.
Yeah.
We even said at some point that President Uhuru Kenyatta should consider constituting a dream team of his own, so that, just move the country from where it seems to be stagnating in terms of debt and management of public
Doesn't
finance.
he have one, though?
Who?
With Matiang'i and them, George Magoha, the performers,
Well,
as it were.
Those are performers.
Yeah.
A dream team now comes in at that point where they have a clear brief. It's
That
reform.
it's official.
Yes,
This is
it's
sort of
reform.
Yeah.
actually, they were at the level of permanent secretaries, and they were taken from the private sector, really.
Okay.
Yes, you had some bankers. Actually, there were many bankers, not just some. But what made it interesting was this was a response to complaints and criticism by international bodies that the people he had in government didn't seem to have the wherewithal to turn or to steer the country in the direction that was required economically. So he brought in people from the private sector. And then something even stranger. The head of the civil servant was Richard Leakey. Yes. Who I think prior to that had been head of Kenya Wildlife Services.
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yes. In fact, it is him who I think the name Kenya, he brought in this name Kenya Wildlife Services. And it was at a time when we were not getting foreign aid. In fact,
Yeah.
we were not getting it.
Everything had dried up.
It had dried up. And what do they call them? Structural adjustment program.
Programs,
Yes.
And what have you. So he brought in Leakey. What made it interesting was here was an African government bringing a white man to head the civil service.
Yes.
Just for starters. And then handpicked individuals. I spoke to one of those individuals in the dream demand. I've said this before in the show. What he told me was their biggest hindrance were the people he found in the ministries. They were a constant bulwark.
Oh, yes.
You try to move forward, they check you at every move.
Right.
Yes.
One of those was Martin Odoro Otieno. Remember, he had come in from the banking sector, and then he was taken into the treasury. And he's written a book and talked about his experience there. And he
Yes.
says, my goodness, yes, so we had all these, ideas and plans. Sometimes we'd have meetings outside of government offices just to sit down as a dream team and think, what is it that we need to bring? What kind of energy and effort do we need to inject into the public service? And everybody was just fighting them back. So the system would not work, would not move. People like Itili Mbathi, who was also there, he was in investment. So he would sit in certain boards of parastatals. You sit in certain boards and you realize, my goodness, the way these guys are thinking and the way they're doing things, completely different from where I've come from. And that's a frustration that they faced.
And I think it's probably something that people face to date.
The civil service has an ecosystem that is best understood if you've grown within that system. An outsider will have a hard time.
Might have the right ideas.
It
and
doesn't matter
everything.
how good those ideas are. You will. Because you have a permanent secretary. We call him the accounting officer. You have your minister. The people who actually make that ministry work are people immediately below that.
Right.
And without them, the civil service would not function.
Right.
Now, and some of them will probably feel they could have been PS, they've been there 20 years, and then you come from nowhere,
Like, who
and you're
is this
suddenly
guy?
the boss. Aye, aye, aye.
And you're coming to tell us things.
And then you come and tell them things which, as far as they're concerned, you don't know.
You don't know.
One of them had come from the World Bank. It does not matter. You come from the banking sector. It does not matter. I mean, you've come umetupata hapa.
In fact, I think Kamau Thuge came in around that same time, didn't he?
I think he came in also, but
Not as part of the dream team.
Yes, at junior levels.
Yes, but yes.
It's that tumeona wangapi mentality.
Oh, yes, that
yes,
was it.
yes. And it's a company Nawewe ni nani.
Nawewe ni nani.
Yes.
Yeah, the guy who had actually come from those Bretton Wood institutions was Dr. Wilfred Mwangi. And also Shem Migotatola as well had some stint in those institutions. Came and found it hard. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live streaming on Spice FM KE. Also, we are broadcasting on KTN News. Let's take a look at the weather, and the conversation continues.
The weather with Spice FM.
Currently 14 degrees in Nairobi, looking at partly cloudy conditions, but mostly a clear day with highs of 27 and lows of 14. Take a step over to Nakuru, where it's 12 degrees right now, and it's going to be clear through the day with highs of 29 and lows of 12. In Nyeri, currently at 13 degrees. It's going to be a sunshiny day there as well, with highs of 27 and lows of 13. 18 degrees in Kisumu with the sun shining as well, with highs of 32. In Mombasa, 25 degrees, clear with periodic clouds. It's going to be 32 degrees the high and the low of 26. In Malindi, partly cloudy conditions at 27 degrees with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Let's take a look over in East Africa, Dar es Salaam with a 26 degrees currently, partly cloudy conditions through the day with highs of 33 and lows of 24. In Kampala at 18 degrees, you'll see a high of 30 and a low of 18. Further down south in Johannesburg, it's currently at 17 degrees, expecting a rain later on in the day this Monday with highs of 24. Moving over west to Lagos, 27 degrees, a hot day today with haze through the rest of the afternoon with highs of 35 and lows of 24. In Europe and London, it's at 8 degrees currently, mostly cloudy conditions. Expects sleet and rain later with lows of 4 and highs of 8. In Paris at 13 degrees, expect rain later on with snow as well with highs of 13 and lows of 6. And finally, rounding it out in New York with currently 5 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. Expect snow, slate and rain later with highs of 7 and lows of 4.
Chilled Spice. Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Catching us on KTN News Morning Express or Spice FM, you are in the right place for this conversation. This is a press review, and we're taking a look at what's making headlines as well as the biggest story of the day. And the death of the former president, Daniel Moi, is still making headlines and will be doing so for the next few days. So he has been lying in state. Kenyans have been milling around Parliament just to get a view of the former leader. And of course, there's a lot of color stories still accompanying that particular main story. And we have one here on the top page of the Standard that tells us former president's military attire on display at Parliament Building, Nairobi yesterday. I would have thought they would have put him in it. Yeah, it would have looked really nice, I think.
Well, it's this uniform that when did he last wear it publicly?
I think I only saw it once. Just once.
Somewhere in the early 80s, right?
Yeah, just once.
Once.
I don't remember seeing him wearing it again. Yes. He was perhaps best remembered in suits.
In suits, yeah.
And the tie.
He had some lovely ties.
and the lapel, the rose, I'm told, was real every single time.
The boutonnieres were
fresh
every day, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Talking about colourful stories, and I think this is one that we'll talk about maybe later on in the show today, about then his influence on women and girls. Yeah. There was a day that he came face to face with the ugly side of FGM. He visited a small mission school and changed its face for good, apparently. It was in 1986, and he was touring the North Rift, as was his, normal, way of doing things, going around the country. And he encountered the sad reality that FGM, or female genital mutilation, and that survivors were living in obscurity at a center that he really couldn't understand. The girls, of course, would flee their homes because they were trying to escape the cut, and were being accommodated at this mission facility. So there were many numbers. There were a huge number of girls now in this facility, and it was dilapidated. And he was like, what is this? And who are these girls that live here, basically? And so when it was explained to him, first of all, he didn't understand or couldn't comprehend that there were so many girls who were running away from this, number one. Number two, there was this vice that was still existent, of course, quite hinged on tradition, that were, making these young girls live in fear. And then to top it off, that they were living in conditions that were quite pitiful as far as he was concerned. So he basically said, we will deal with the FGM as an issue later. But for now, these girls need to live in a place that is at the very least honorable. So basically asked them to pull down the entire building and rebuild it so that they had an honorable place to live. Of course, the interesting thing was that he sat down and listened to the stories of all of these young girls. Not all of them, because there were quite a number, but a significant number. And then he ordered that the district commissioner immediately start the construction of new buildings for the Kapsowar girls.
And it's thanks to that they got 6 dormitories, classrooms, and a bus was donated to the school. And they even changed the uniform color to his favorite color, just to show their appreciation.
What was his favorite color?
Who knows?
Oh, there you go. Maroon. It was maroon. It was maroon.
So they changed to maroon.
Yeah.
All right. And the name of the school was renamed? Was it or was it not? I mean, it must have been
Yes,
called
it was renamed. It was Kapsowar Girls, and then it became Moi Kapsowar Girls, of course, in memory of the revolution of the once rescue center. So it was a rescue center, and then it became a school, and then later it got elevated to a national school. In 2013, it was elevated to a national school, and its principal, Helen Mabese, said the school has lost an iconic founder and mentor.
Now, when you talk about these stories of the former president, of course, there are those that are accusing the media of going all out to try and sanitize
and change history.
Is that a fair assessment, though?
What aspect of the information that has been in the media constitutes or could justify that accusation? What is it that the media has done which
is sanitizing?
Yes. What is it?
Because are we talking about stuff that he didn't do?
These are
or
not
that
lies,
he did, or are they lies? You know, like a story like this.
Are we reconstructing something? It didn't happen.
There's too much focus on only this kind of stories, and not much focus on, for example, telling the stories of those who were sent to exile, telling the stories of those who were tortured, telling the stories of the voices that were completely suppressed.
But then, these are not stories that were never told. They've been told. I think it's the timing that comes into play right now. To what end would that be for? To dig that up, I think.
It's balancing the story.
True.
In fact, the conversation that's going out is, we as Africans have this thing of when somebody is dead, you don't even talk. Even if somebody was killed,
you don't talk ill of the dead.
You don't talk ill of the dead.
Right.
At this point, you're basically saying, he was a good man, despite all his challenges. He loved his family. He was a young boy. You always like to talk about the positive side.
Right.
So is it just is it an unfair accusation of not just the media but just all of us as Kenyans that we're trying to suppress everything else, put it in the back burner?
I don't
there are
know
those
to
that
what
want us to say that this man ran a repressive regime.
To what end?
If you're talking about oppressive regime, since we're talking about we've used the term, why don't we quantify it and qualify it, okay? Around the time when Moi was president, you had people in Latin America who, in my estimate, are gold standard dictators, okay? People who went about killing their citizenry willy-nilly without even a second thought. The ramifications of it are being felt even now. You're talking about Chile, you're talking about Argentina, you're talking about people who worked, you're talking 30 years, many years ago. They're now being brought to book for the things they did. You know why? There isn't much memory of good. The evil or the harm is what is preeminent. We have a case here where a lot went wrong. People were tortured. Families were dismantled. Families were dislocated. Yet, there are also many stories of good people who benefited. Now, what you're talking about is how do you balance this? On a weighing scale, people tend to want to forget the harm. Anything that was harmful to you. We had a gentleman who was in the torture chambers here. He didn't want to recount those days. He did not want to talk about them. It's the way we are. It's something you don't want to talk about. You'd rather think and look positively on the things that have happened. It doesn't mean that you're sanitized.
There are those that want to talk about it. For example, people like Professor Makao Mutua, he's even posted it on social media and saying, look, I'm looking back at the years.
He's gone ahead and written an article.
I'm looking back at the years of Moi and I'm thinking, this is what happened. I lost a huge chunk of my youth spending it outside the country.
He did.
And this is...
And the thing is, he isn't the only one.
There are many.
Remember,
Wanyeri Kihoro was telling us the same thing.
Yes.
When he visited Wanyeri Kihoro, the former Nyeri Town MP.
Yes.
He was tortured. He was. But he came here and he was, also looking beyond that.
Yeah.
You see, if we want to give this thing a fair assessment, we actually need to ask how many people were actually detained, how many people were jailed during that period, and how many of them have told their stories. Many people tell the stories of their torture, but they balance it out until you know something. Since then, and then they go on.
This has happened, right?
This has happened. One of the things that Moi did when he first came into power, remember, he released something like 26 detainees. He didn't invent detention. It was a legal process that the country had. You could be detained. You could actually be held. You could be arrested, held. Put it this way, you could go to jail directly. Yeah. You're arrested, you go to jail, and you sit there.
Yeah.
These laws have since been changed. In any system of government, even when you have a situation where you could argue the government isn't repressive, there are always people in that system who will feel left out, targeted. Now, so at what point is our history or the history telling an accurate form of it? How many people suffered under Mau Mau? And how many people to date still suffer the ramifications of Mau Mau? I've mentioned in this same studio the issue of something called the Swinnerton Plan. Most people haven't heard of it and don't even bother with it. It was an ingenious plan to dislocate culturally and socially an entire community, the Kikuyu, entire. Now, you cannot dislocate a community and think that the effect will be felt immediately. No. It's a generation later that you feel the impact. Now, that story isn't told. It hasn't been hidden, but people don't tell the story.
People don't talk about it.
It's unfortunate, but this is how many human beings are. They actually do not like to be reminded of the terrible things that have happened in their lives.
Well, I think it's a kind of repressive reality in the sense that, remembering it or rather speaking about it is going to make you remember it. And then, of course, it's going to conjure all kinds of negative feelings that you don't want to live in that reality anymore, to live through it anymore.
But that
and I
history
think that's the
teaches
reason
you
why,
as well.
Sure, but
if you try to balance it out, you need to talk about it so that history teaches you.
Of course.
And tells you this is why we don't want to go back to this point.
You'll find that there's some people who will never speak about it in their lifetime, and because of the fact that it was so painful for them. Again, I think that is one of the reasons why we don't speak ill of the dead, because it now brings up a lot of memories that people don't want to have to deal with.
Actually, Eric has an extremely valid point. If you really want to overcome these things, it's something you must talk about.
Of course, absolutely.
In detail.
Yeah, you have to go through the
No whitewashing, no mamby-pamping it. Just say, this is what happened.
Yeah.
In Rwanda, they have a museum.
Oh, yeah.
If you visit that museum, it'll traumatize you. It is good that it should, because it reminds you of what happened.
It's a constant reminder.
The skulls that you see in that museum are not wax skulls. They're skulls of real people who actually died.
Yeah.
In Germany, the issues surrounding World War II are taught in detail. Again, lest people forget. And with that in mind, it is actually correct that the things that happen in this country, from independence and prior to independence, they must be taught as they were.
Then this is
so
the
that
thing.
We know.
Then this is the thing, because if we look at it now, if you want to look at it critically, right, Eric, just like you're saying, if we talk about healing and cohesion and things like this, there really then cannot be any kind of real unity, real healing, if those issues then are not visited in detail. If that's what we're looking at, if we want to be serious about some of the things that we see then in modern, in current situations, in current politics in this country, any country for that matter, if you don't go through the details and find out, the question you often ask, where did the rain start beating us? Then at that point, if we're not able to then heal through that,
we don't go back.
And what we are doing now is almost futile.
We've attempted that with the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. It wasn't, as well done as it should have been, right? Because, well, in fact, already the TJRC itself had issues, the composition of the TJRC and all.
The chair.
But from the chair to the other members. But also, that's the point. You come, you speak the truth, you seek justice, you reconcile. And that has to happen.
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing. Those who are feeling that, a lot of the Moi stories are not being told, it's important. You tell your story.
I think so.
From wherever angle.
And I think they need to be given
from
a platform.
Professor Makao Mutua, you want to speak about it, talk about it. And then also you've got to balance it out with people who are telling the story from the other side.
Absolutely.
And those who see a different perspective of, yes, I know what happened, but looking back, I can see this is where the president was coming from.
You know,
And they're not, it's good that it's not lies. Those people who are saying good things, these are things that the president actually did for them. The guy who got to ride in a chopper, small things, and then the big things, such as he intervened when they didn't want to appoint me to a board, and then without knowing what happened, suddenly things were streamlined for me. And on The Nation, on page 10, we have a story that actually tries to capture some of those things. We're told the loyalists to rebels, the men and women who served in Moi's cabinets. There's a part of it that says, well, Moi's cabinet was made up of volatile, arrogant, and uncooperative ministers like Paul Ngei. Others were neither tough nor forceful. So I think it goes
There are
in
some guys
on
there who
some
are
of
just
them.
filling the seats.
Yeah.
Neither tough nor forceful. Okay. Were they effective, though? That's the other question. That's what we should ask. Maybe they were not tough or forceful, but they were effective. This is a Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi. We are in Mombasa on 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, and of course we're in Malindi on 97.7. We live stream the show as well on www.spicefm.co.ke. We also live stream on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE, we are live streaming on Facebook at Spice FM KE, on Twitter and YouTube, Spice FM KE. The show, of course, is a joint broadcast with KTN News. So this is also the Morning Express newspaper review. That's a top story review. It's 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning. Let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation.